today, we had a Google Hangout with the Haitian Free Thinkers group, and I thought it was pretty successful because this is our third year anniversary being in existence. So that's a very, very big deal. The existence of Haitian Free Thinkers came as a response partly to the tragic earthquake that hit Haiti in 2010, and so that's about to be the fourth year anniversary for that. After Pat Robertson made his statement about the Haitian revolutionary heroes, or the people who fought the French to gain the freedom for the Haitians, he said that they basically made a deal with the devil. So I took great exception to that, and I wanted to do something about it. So I came up with Haitian Free Thinkers. Also, there was a local meetup, a big regional conference that we were having down in South Florida, and there was a lot of famous people there. Dave Silverman was there. James and Reggie was there. And I met some other people who have since become comrades and friends in the secular community, such as Mandisa Thomas of Black Non-Believers. And basically from there, I asked myself, would it be worth it to start a group focused on Haitians? And that's what Haitian Free Thinkers is essentially about, although we do not discriminate at all. In fact, we even have a few believers who are in Haitian Free Thinkers, the group on Facebook, but that's only because these people they have the right mindset. They are curious, or they're friendly to atheists, and so I think it's good to do some interaction between believers and non-believers, and that's really what we want to do. We want to basically enter the market of ideas and let people know that we exist, and hopefully that can generate some curiosity and start a positive dialogue between us and the believers. I was a former believer myself. I was a Christian, and basically I took the time to read the Bible, and that started my path towards atheism. I also eventually went on to read the entire Holy Quran in English. I didn't read it in Arabic, unfortunately, because I'm still not literate in that language as of yet. But I did complete that task. So, those are the reasons why I'm atheist. That's the short version of the story. Okay, so I'm awaiting for James to complete his task and join me here. So I'm going to talk about my week while I wait for him. So my week was pretty fast. As always, I was just enjoying some football because this is the weekend of the divisional playoff games, and everything is going along according to form. Seattle won versus New Orleans. I was hoping for a good game, and it was pretty decent. It looks like Seattle will be going to the Super Bowl as of right now. The Colts probably just finished losing to the Patriots, and the Patriots are doing very well, unfortunately, because I am a Miami Dolphins fan. However, I give them credit because they've had to overcome a lot of adversity to be in the place that they are right now. So it looks like New England will be going to Denver, assuming that Denver beats San Diego, who is probably the last surprise team in the NFL right now. So for those of you who are listening or who will listen to this show, I want to let you know that you can call in at 646-652-4442. That's 646-652-4442. The show comes to you live every Saturday evening at 11:30 p.m. And you can call in and express yourself, ask questions, whatever it is that's on your mind. We're here to educate, entertain, and all that. So that's how you're going to reach us live. If you have any questions, you can email us at HaitianFreeThinkers@gmail.com. That's HaitianFreeThinkers@gmail.com, or one word. So you can do that. We also have a Google Voice number. And looks like we have a caller on the line. Let me go straight to the caller. 786. Are you on?
Hey, Reggie.
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on, man? I'm just calling your show. I'm calling your show. I'm calling your show. I'm viewing it for the first time. And I just want to know what you're talking about today. It's my first time after years, after you've been, doing the show. It's the first time I'm actually listening to it live. So just want to know what you're talking about tonight, and I'm here to listen.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. What I'm talking about tonight is basically my week in review. We always talk about how our week went, but the title of the show is about immigration, anarchy, and the Book of Mormon play. My co-host is not on right now, but he sent me an article showing that there was a group of Haitians that were on a small boat that capsized off near Bahamas, and like 30 Haitians died.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you know about that?
Yeah. I live. We watch it. I watched it on the news, and my heart goes out to them. They're trying to get here for a better life, man. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. I don't think I had heard of the story until he made me aware of it. And as I read it, I was watching the video from the Coast Guard people. I said to myself, I just feel like numb, like it's not real. Like I can't even imagine being on a small boat like that, and it's cold and wet. They ran out of. But we wanted to talk about the policies involved. Why the Haitians don't have the kind of policies for them that the Cubans have. What do you think about?
Are you referring to the Wet Foot Dry Foot Act?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, it was more in the sense of that. I think that act came about when the Mariel boat lift came here, and Cubans were, because Fidel was a dictator, so they had to flee that country or fear their life. So that's why the United States gave them amnesty to say, if you make it here, when you touch ground, we'll give you a free pass. Because keep in mind, Fidel was a dictator, so they're trying to free the dictatorship to come for a better life. And Americans, USA don't believe in dictatorship, so they gave them. That's why they gave them the Wet Foot Dry Foot Act. Now, keep in mind that the Haitians, as Haiti, we don't have dictatorship. We had Papa Doc and the rest of the corrupted presidents. The U.S. knew about that, so the U.S. basically helped them to get into power and to help them, so they didn't feel like it was dictatorship because the U.S. had control. That's basically why we don't have that policy in form and play for us.
Okay, I'm hearing a little bit of noise in the background. Do you have the show playing? Or is there a television on?
No, I was actually watching a football game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you good. It's just that there's an echo or some kind of background noise, but I hear you much better now. So I read the article, and basically kind of like what you described, based on the past and the political situation, we have the Wet Foot Dry Foot Act. Now, is there anything that Haitians can do to kind of perhaps improve the policies for them?
No, there's nothing we can do because we're not under any type of distress from our government. Our government is not, the Haitian government is not there's not a dictatorship government. Now, if we had a dictatorship government, yes, but we don't have a dictatorship government. We have an open, process, democratic public presidency, so it's not. We don't fall underneath that type of category. Now, the Haitian people are coming over here for better life, because they don't know, and you have to keep in mind, you can't blame them, because what happens is that we as Haitians, our ancestors, our parents and stuff, what they do is that they come over here and they forget about the people on the other side. They don't go back and help out. It's all about about us here and raising our family here and stuff like that. So they're like, hey, forget about us, and stuff like that. Fill for paper for it, but then we're struggling over here trying to make ends meet and stuff. So we don't have the opportunity to say, okay, this is what it is. And then you also have to blame the parents as well, because us as our age is that we allow our culture to die out. We allow our culture to not be recognized. We're not doing nothing. We're not teaching our kids Creole. We're not teaching our kids, the Haitian way of doing things. We were the first blacks. We were the first independent. We were the first black people to gain our independence in 1804. But we don't represent that. Everybody scream, oh yeah, I'm Haitian, I'm Haitian, I'm Haitian this, I'm Haitian that. But what have you done for the Haitian community? How is that? How is you saying you're Haitian? Has that died down in you? You're not teaching. You're not teaching. Your kids the Haitian culture, how to make minute and how to bully or bloodline. You're not teaching your kids that. So of course, they don't know and stuff like that. Our culture dies down, and we're not giving back enough to say, what? How can I help Haiti? How can I help my country? And that's what happens.
Okay. Have you been to Haiti?
No, I have not. I have never been to Haiti, and that's my fault. I had opportunities to go, but I never went. Like, as far as my sisters, both of my sisters, my oldest sister's there now. She's there for a week and a half now. My niece hasn't been. My niece's been 5 times. My little sister's been a couple of times. I just never had to say, let me go. And that's my fault. And I'm not saying I'm not going to say, okay, well, we never we let it die down. I'm one of those kids that never been to Haiti, but then I would help out my country if I hear something to help out over there, or like a walk or a cause or anything. I'm going to support. I'm going to support the best way I know how. Learn information and help out. Send money, send food.
Okay. Well, I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that every little bit that anybody can do helps. And our group, Haitian FREE Thinkers, is trying to help in our own way because, like I said in the announcements, we are one of the world's very few secular groups. And I was doing some research before during the week. I learned a couple of things about Haiti. The first thing I learned is that, I don't know if you know, Phil, but there's a little bit of a good, strong, growing presence of Islam in Haiti. Did you know about that? Have you ever met any Haitians who are Muslims?
Yes, I have. I have my uncle. He's Muslim. He's Muslim.
Your uncle?
Yeah, he converted over to Muslim. It was a shock to me to hear that, because I was like, whoa, why? What's the purpose? He actually currently lives in Canada right now, and he converted while he was in Haiti. So it's like, whoa, okay, but it was like a shock to the family. We don't treat him different. That's still my uncle. It's his decision, his belief. Everybody's entitled to their own belief and decision or what they want to do.
So he was exposed to Islam while in Haiti, so this is not something that happened while in the United States or Canada, correct?
No, because he never been to the States. He never been to the States. He's always lived in Haiti. Due to the fact that my mom's sister, who lives in Canada, actually, that's her son, filed paperwork to finally get him over there. And now he's in Canada. I don't discriminate on different beliefs. You go way back. I remember when you was in the church. I remember when you were tithing heavily. I remember when you were part of the groups. And you used to tell me come to church with you and stuff like that. And I found when you told me you were atheist, that didn't change our friendship. I think it made us stronger and bond in another way. And because you read, you gain knowledge. Just because you're a different thing, that doesn't define our people how you should be judged and how you should be looked at.
Definitely, and as you were speaking about that, I remember being in church with you, and we had some good times. So I want to remind everybody that this is the Haitian FREE Thinkers show. You can call in at 646-652-4442, 646-652-4442. We have Phil on the line who's joining us this evening on the divisional playoff weekend for the NFL. How long do I have you with me, Phil?
I'm here, man. I'm actually, I'm up washing clothes and stuff like that for the week. I decided to stay in and wash clothes, and I just hopped on Facebook and I see that you were broadcasting live. I said, I never been supportive of your station, and I said, hey, let me just join in tonight and see what's happening. You have to have support. So I'm here.
I do appreciate that. So besides the whole Muslim thing, I was watching a video that I posted probably on my wall as well. It was about a 30-minute video. That 60 Minutes did a story on the Haitian First Lady, Baby Doc's wife. Her name is Michelle Bennett. Have you ever heard of her?
You posted this on your page?
Yes, I'm going to my page right now to make sure I put it there. But basically, Michelle Bennett Duvalier was the wife of Baby Doc, and basically
when did
she
you
was
post it?
It was 13 hours ago. So if you go to my page, you'll see it. It says Michelle Martelly, Sawafiak, Michelle. Yeah, so I was looking at that video, and it was very interesting. And long story short, growing up, I knew about Baby Doc because I was living in Haiti when his last years of reign was almost up, and I actually saw his motorcade racing towards the airport before he left to go to France. And I learned based on this video that it was a United States Air Force plane that took him.
Correction, he didn't go to France. He went to Switzerland first, and then he flew into France. That's the correction.
Oh, okay. So Switzerland and then to France. But it was a very informative video. It's kind of brutal, to be honest with you. It's not really for the faint of heart, but I just didn't know about that aspect, about the female who was behind this guy. Baby Doc was brutal, but his wife was supposedly worse. So that was an interesting dynamic, and this is the part of the culture. Just overall that I'm interested in. I'm interested in learning about all these interesting characters beyond the Jean-Jacques Dessalines and the Toussaint Louverture. Not to say that I know them intimately, but I want to hear about somebody else. There's this other character. I don't know if you've heard of him, named Macandal. Have you ever heard of this person?
I am aware of him. I'm not familiar with him, but I am aware of who he is. I've heard like bits of things about him, but not too much.
Right. So so there's a lot to learn basically, and I welcome learning new things about anybody, good, bad, or indifferent. It's good to learn about the culture, and a lot of those things are very, very interesting. Valerie told me that her uncle, I think it is, her uncle was involved in a movie called Moloch Tropical. Moloch Tropical. Have you heard of this movie? It's a Haitian movie.
No, I have not.
There's clips of it on YouTube, and some Haitian movies, they actually post the whole movie on YouTube, but this one is not one of them. So I don't know how I would get my hands on a copy. I probably would have to go to like Amazon or get somebody from Miami to find it or whatever. But Haitian movies, like, do you watch any? Have you seen any good ones lately, or?
Are you talking about like the new ones that they be having out like on DVD now?
Any of them, because I haven't seen an authentic Haitian movie in a while. I own one of the I Love You, Anne.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've seen that. They have a part 2. They have a part. They just had a premiere and at the North Miami Beach Convention Center of their new movie. Basically, I have seen a couple of them, and they're good. You know, you have some good ones, you have some bad ones. They have, but they're pretty overall good, man. You know, I like to support them, man, because these are our culture people who's making a name for themselves. You know, trying to build, something. An empire, man. Not an empire, but basically build something for the Haitians, man. Because we need that, man. We need to get out that stereotype and we need to get out the box, leaving us in the box and stuff like that. So we need to get out the box and start branding more things out. We have the Haitian band, we have the bars. We have to get into movies, get into we start low, but we work our way up. And that's a good thing.
Okay, that is a good thing. Have you ever heard of the movie Kidnapping?
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay, that one has my homeboy Grimo, aka Mecca.
Okay, I know you're talking about. I seen the little. My sister's actually into the Haitian movies. My sister and my mom are into it, and they have a collection at their house. And I know exactly what you're talking. When you say Guillermo played in it, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Yep. One quick second. I think that's my co-host. One second.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to do this.
Do what?
He's calling on this line, and
okay. Well. This is what I'll do. I'm here. I will disconnect. I will listen to you guys talk, man. Just do your thing, man. I'm here.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate your call, and we'll be here every Saturday night. Feel free to call back in.
Not a problem, man. All right, LT. I'll let you.
All right. All right. So that was Phil. He was calling in, a good friend of mine. We go way back. And I'm going to have to get James on the line. The guest number. So as you're listening to me text him, I will remind you can call the same way, 646-652-4442. still talked about Haitian. We talked about the Haitian culture. We talked about immigration. We talked a little bit about the wet foot, dry foot situation, and I think it's tremendously sad. I was reading the article that James sent me, and like I hinted at earlier, I couldn't imagine being on a boat trying to get to wherever, in this case, I guess, the United States. There was a fisherman that told the Bahamian authorities that there was a boat. The Bahamian authorities didn't have their airplanes ready to go, so they had to essentially call the United States Coast Guard, who sent out a plane and found the Haitians. And it's a tragedy. So here's James.
Yes, how you doing, bro?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Just got through doing some work.
All right, I feel you. I've been just holding it down. We actually had one guest caller call in right before you called me, and so I couldn't do the switch over without possibly losing this line, so that's why I had you call the guest call-in line. So it's all good. So how was your week?
Oh, my week was great. It's just been doing some work, getting a lot more tattoo work in, and that's what's really going on. I'm really enjoying doing tattoos, and so every time I get a chance to do them, I like doing them. Tonight I just got a little carried away. It was a piece that was it took longer than I thought, with some names and some stars and stuff.
Okay, so you are also a tattoo artist then?
Yeah, I am. Like I was an apprentice in the shop, and the guy, he was closing down the shop, and he was like, "I'm going to teach you everything I can, within the time that the shop is being open, and while the shop is being open, and once the shop open, closes down, I'll give you some more pointers." And the shop is shut down, and he's still been giving me pointers. And I do a lot of tattoos on my friends and stuff like that, and also on myself.
Okay. Well, this week's show is going to cover immigration, anarchy, and the Book of Mormon play. So I read the article that you sent me. I saw the video that was within the article. I gave a little bit of my 2 cents on it, but tell us what you thought about the article. Catch the people up on what exactly we're talking about here.
Well, in the article, like 30 to 35 Haitians died, on a boat trying to actually come to the United States, and they even found like maybe 5 of them, swimming on a raft ahead of them that were trying to come to shore. But the whole situation is sad because, prior to this year, they were saying last year or a couple of years later, earlier, it was like maybe 100, maybe 200 and something attempts to try to get here. This year it's like over 2,000. So it's like that's really like crazy. It must be like dire circumstances over there.
Yes, it is very unfortunate. Phil and I talked about the wet foot, dry foot policy that the U.S. has. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said Philip and I, we spoke about the wet foot, dry foot policy that the United States has, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
See, that was on the thing. I was going to ask you about that. What was the policy? Because it seems as though Haitian immigrants, when they get here, I guess because there's so many of them, they just like in the article they put them on a probation deportation period or something like that, and it's like they just just send them right back, and it's like it has to be some kind of human health aid or something like that to help these people once we at least get citizenship, because there's a reason why they're leaving, Well,
yeah, it's true. Basically, it's called wet foot, dry foot because if a Cuban is able to get a dried foot on the land on the United States, basically they're allowed to stay. I think if they get intercepted while they're at sea, they return them. But at the same time, come to think about it, I think they still might be able to stay in the United States if they make it within the 12-mile border of the seas of the United States, because I think the United States extends 12 miles out to sea, and if the Coast Guard pick them up, they might still be able to stay. So I'm not exactly fully versed in the law, but I do know that if a Cuban person is able to set foot in the United States, they have a very great chance of staying, but that's not the case with the Haitians. Basically, whether they set foot here or not, they most likely will be returned back to Haiti.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't see. I find that very unfair because remember the whole Ayisyen Gonzalez case and everything like that. Like, you know, they actually like tried to keep that little kid here away from his, you know what I'm saying, natural father that was over there in Cuba.
Yes, I do remember that case. I was in Miami when that whole thing was going down. I think they even made a movie out of the whole thing.
Yeah,
it was a very controversial situation. He ended up going back to Cuba. So I don't know if that's a victory for Fidel Castro or whatever. I don't think that he personally really cared because that wasn't, you know, his kid or whatever. But it was a big deal in Miami. So that was that. I mean, immigration. It's big. It's a big topic. It's a big topic not just for Haitians. A few days ago, I had Terrence Courtney from Black Alliance for Just Immigration on. We actually did a show during the week because the little special thing that Blog Talk Radio gave me to have more than hour-long shows is going to end next week, actually. And so I had him on so he can talk about his organization. So they were trying to give immigrants better status, especially black immigrants, because we are underserved. So it's a big situation. For the Haitian community, obviously, a lot of us tend to know somebody that's been affected intimately with immigration one way or another. So that's an issue that's usually close to our hearts. So would that be the case for you? I mean, do you know anybody that's been affected by immigration?
Yeah, actually, I know somebody who's actually very, very close to me who's been affected by immigration. She was brought here when she was just a little child, and under, I guess, you know, certain papers probably wasn't all the way correct, you know, but she's here now, and certain things that she wants to do, but they ask for, you know, birth certificate and certain stuff like that, and there's a lot of things that she can't do.
Okay, so, is she okay? Did she get deported or is she still here?
No, she's okay, and she's not, like, in danger of getting deported, but a lot of times when she tries to get certain services, they'll ask for birth certificate and identification. In Florida, especially in Polk County, Florida, they ask for identification on just about everything that you want to do.
All right. So, everybody, you're listening to the Haitian FREE Thinkers radio show. You're listening to James. My name is Reggie, and our show comes on every Saturday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can call into our show at 646-652-4442. Once again, that's 646-652-4442. Haitian Free Thinkers is one of the world's few secular groups for Haitians. By secular, I mean atheist, agnostic, humanist, those types of titles that people choose to use. Basically, we're not religious people, and that's supposed to be, right now, a very controversial and rare thing in the Haitian population, but we're hoping to change that by doing some outreach, talking to people. And this radio show is one of the ways that we try to do that by, talking about different things that are of interest. So tonight we covered immigration as the first part of our show. Anything else happened of interest during the week for you?
No, not exactly. Just been working. Actually, that's it. Nothing really exciting ever happened. Nothing like that.
Okay. Well, I chose to name this show Immigration, Anarchy, and the Book of Mormon because the last two parts, the Anarchy and the Book of Mormon, are things that I've recently taken some interest in, and that's because I do a lot of research and watching YouTube videos, and basically when you hear the word anarchy, like what do you think it is, or what kind of images does it come up in your mind?
Well, I remember originally the last show we were talking about this, and I think before the show when I gave you the description, I was just thinking, just everybody's it just basically when you hear the word anarchy, I just see burning buildings, everything going to hell, everybody's like running around, going crazy, survival of the fittest, and there's no control, no law, no order. But, since the last show, you give me a different definition. I think I couldn't get the whole thing down pat, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn something today.
Right. Anarchy was a word that I learned about probably around high school, and it was taboo, basically. The word was taboo because there's this book that supposedly that if you bought it, it's called the Anarchist Cookbook. So, this was like what was told to me. Like, I didn't confirm that. But basically, if you bought this book, you would go into some kind of list by the big brothers who are watching us, And this was before 9/11, so now who knows? But but
library is run by the Fed, so.
Yeah, so that was what gave me the same kind of imagery that you just brought up. That this destruction and just like a what's the word, like a Mad Max type of world, like kind of basically what you just described. But very recently, basically what happened was I was watching a video on somebody's page on Facebook. And I discovered this guy who promotes anarchy, and when he used the term, it was not what you described, basically. And he's like, most people think it's this, but it's really that. And come to find out, when you look it up, he was exactly right. And it's been a very fascinating subject. And basically, what he's arguing for is for us to stop living by using governments, and basically volunteer our cooperation towards each other, basically. And what I'm saying is very simplistic. There's a lot of resources out there. If you or anybody else who's listening choose to go and research, or if you guys have any questions, of course, please feel free to write us at Haitian FREE Thinkers at gmail.com or call us at 646-652-4442. But the reason why I bring it up is because I see a lot of analogy between the anarchy people and us atheists, because when people hear about atheists, what kind of images come up in their mind based on what you've experienced, James?
Well, it's like, from what I've heard since I've been atheist, y'all eat babies, y'all don't have love for nobody, y'all have respect for nobody, y'all are always mad, y'all don't want, I don't know, I've just heard so much bad stuff about us, and that's just some of it right there. Or y'all don't believe in nothing, so how can y'all love anything? I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's some definitions which like basically probably don't describe you, and but you kind of have to wonder like where did they get those things from, like eating the baby, you know? It's like some old propaganda that somebody started, like a bad rumor.
Exactly. You know, that's what I was gonna say. That's what they did about anarchy and atheism. Because like once you see that A with the circle around it, oh, you're like, oh, this person's crazy. Because I remember back in the days in like high school, kids had it tattooed or they wear a shirt and it said anarchy, and it always had like some rock band with like some crazy devil-looking faces. So you're thinking, oh, that's what anarchy is. People with devil-looking faces that just want to, I guess, torment and cause pain. No law.
Right. So it was definitely had a negative connotation, and I another group that had the same kind of response from me when I was younger was the Freemasons.
Mhm.
So I don't know what your experience is with Freemasons, but me it was like this very clandestine and spooky group of people who were, working in the shadows, and anybody who is important, like a president or a lawyer or, a big actor, anybody famous was probably a Mason, And if you go back in time, anybody who's anybody was also a Mason. So do you think the Masons, when you first heard of them, had that same kind of negative connotation?
Yeah, to me, when I heard the word Mason or Freemason, it was like a secret group of people that do secret things and they try to do secret stuff, and then you hear about they have these secret handshakes. You hear all these urban legends, and they have a secret way they stand, so if they don't get in trouble, if they go to court, if they stand a certain way or hold their hands a certain way, then the judge will know they're Mason, and the judge will let them off. You hear all kinds of stuff like that. And we have right here where I'm from, we have maybe two lodges, maybe like two buildings here. And every time I ride by and see anybody out there, there's just a bunch of old white guys.
Yeah, a bunch of old white guys. One of the first lodges that I visited when I tried to join Freemasons was a lodge of old white guys, and that's exactly what they were. I'm talking about like World War II veterans. I mean, they were really old. And
you know what?
What happened?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll wait till you finish.
Oh, okay. So so that's basically, I bring this point up that basically different groups get these negative connotations, negative press, and when you look further into the group, you find out that it's not exactly what you thought it was, and that's basically where I'm at with the whole anarchy thing. It's very interesting. I'm reading a book about guy that did the video is proposing so I can get a better understanding. But I mean, it's a very, very challenging book, and I like to get my mind stretched. I'm not saying that I totally agree with everything that he's proposing, but it's very interesting. And what I find so fascinating is that, like, when we were growing in school, I feel like we didn't get a chance to be exposed to all the options that the world has to offer. For example, I had to find out on my own that there were different religions, for example, and that there were different options for people. Like growing up, I used to think that it was just, I thought everybody was Christian until I met some people who were not Christian. Would you say that that's pretty much been your experience as well?
Well, and like I guess when I grew up in church, I knew of different religions because like people at my church, they used to, like, I grew up in the Church of Christ, and we thought that we were the only church that was, or people that were going to heaven, because that was the only church that was right church. And we used to talk about so many other people's religions. People would be like, hey, I was at work. This guy, he's a Muslim. He's saying this, that. And I debated him, this, that. And so, you know, I knew there was other religions out there, but I just knew that, or from what I was told, don't really talk to them because they crazy or whatever. They don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, so the church that you grew up in made themselves seem like they were the one and only, and everybody else was there.
Yeah, that's exactly. I forgot what verse it was, and that's how they justified that they were the only one and true church, the Church of Christ. And it was like, if it's not a Church of Christ, then they're not going to heaven.
So did that include other Christian denominations like the Jehovah's Witnesses as well?
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses. They were talking about Baptists. They were the worst. They say the Baptists used to go to church Sunday, watch football, and drink beer and beat their wife on by Monday morning. So I don't know. It was a little joke they used to say, but they used to say Baptists like probably one of the worst ones.
That's pretty interesting because I was Baptist. I want to remind everybody that who are listening to the Haitian FREE Thinkers show here on Blog Talk Radio. If you wish to give us a call, the guest call-in number is 646-652-4442, 646-652-4442. You're listening to James, and my name is Reggie. We are the co-hosts of the Haitian FREE Thinkers radio show. Haitian FREE Thinkers is one of the few places where secular Haitians can gather. You can find us on Facebook. Just search for Haitian FREE Thinkers and you'll find us. In the past 2 months or so, we've been getting a lot of new members, a lot of people requesting to join in. I'm hoping that some of you who recently did join in have heard of the show, and if so, I thank you. Tonight we had Phil call in, so that's our second call-in guest. And I know we come on a little bit late than most radio shows, and that's kind of okay. They'll have an opportunity to listen to the show after it's been recorded, so that's what's going on. Speaking of callers, I have a call, area code 740. You want to take that, James?
Sure, why not?
Hi. Area code 740.
This is Tony in Ohio. Hello? I might be in your chat room if you have one. I don't know if you do or don't.
Okay, let me open the chat room. Tony,
it's all right. I don't need it. Yeah, I don't need it. It's all right.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. What's going on?
No, man, I saw Anarchy and Lark and Rose. I'm an anarchist, so I thought I'd call in. Plus, I'm Sicilian, so I share kind of a similar history with Haitians as far as slavery and whatnot and the overthrow of masters and whatnot. So I thought I would, give some props to y'all and thank you for doing a show like this and trying to educate people like myself as to your certain history and whatnot because, I know my history is relatively unknown, so I'm sure yours is probably the same. And it's nice to hear some people out here talking about stuff like that.
Okay.
Well, welcome, brother. Welcome. Welcome to the show, man.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how did you hear about Anarchy?
Well, I mean, I'm from Sicilian descent, so, our island was the largest sugarcane producing plantation on the planet up until the New World was discovered. Well, you know what I mean by discovered. In other words, Europeans discovered it. And my people were raped and pillaged by every colonial power you can imagine, including North African Moors, including Germans, including French, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, we have a long disdain for government authority. We invented our own lines of authority. Unfortunately, they became organized into organized criminal organizations, as is any government, I suppose. And, so I have a natural familial attachment to a distrust for government. Like the word mafia, in lore, I don't know how accurate it is historically, it's passed down verbally, but, the word mafia itself comes from, it basically means in Sicilian, death to all Frenchmen, because they were our owners at the time, and we, basically had an uprising and killed them all and threw them in the Mediterranean, you know what I mean? So that's why I like seeing a Haitian show. I mean, it's cool because you guys got a real similar history in that regard, man, except you guys were successful. Like, we kept getting, we get rid of our masters and go 7 or 10 years, and then they would come back from another colonial power and take us over again. You guys were successful, and, it's a lot of people like to look down on Haitian people or whatever, and, because of the corruption of government or whatever, but that's government, that's not the people, and you guys deserve a lot of respect for having overthrown those masters, because we couldn't do it successfully for any sustained period, and you guys have, and that's to be commended.
Wow, I mean, that's well appreciated, man. I thank
Yeah,
you for all that knowledge. And Sicily, a lot of people, basically don't know enough about Sicily. Can you let us know a little bit about that, just so that we want to make sure we're on the same level?
Basically, it was an island with native people, and the native people were first enslaved, I think, by the Greeks, and then the Roman Empire came in, and then the French, the Germans, et cetera, et cetera. The Germans, I think, they weren't Germanic people at the time. They didn't call them Germans. They were called all kind of different things, Huns, and it depended on the time period. But they imported Slovaks, which is where the word slave came from originally. They would import these people from the Slavic nations, and they called them Slavs or slaves. And then they put the smackdown on us on different sides of the island. The Greeks pretty much owned the what would be the east side of the island. The north side and the west side were mostly owned by the Romans. And then as time went on, the French came in and owned the west side, but not the north. Germans came in and owned the north, but not the west or east. And then finally, the North African Moors invaded and took over. We have blood related to Phoenicians, which is people from modern-day Lebanon, so, kind of an Arab descent. Part of our language in different parts of the island is different. So, like on the west and south side of the island, there's a lot of Arabic included in the language, whereas on the east and north side, it's more similar to Italian. It actually predates Italian, though. Like Italian, the language, most people think that Sicilian is just a derivative of Italian, but it's actually the opposite. Their language is a derivative of ours. Ours is predating theirs. It's basically a history of really hard oppression. Like slaves in America, for example, they definitely had it hard. I'm not trying to discount that. But about 2% of the transatlantic slave trade came to the United States, whereas, a large percent, about 40%, made it to Brazil. And in America, they were probably treated better than anywhere in the Western world. They actually got to see veterinarians, which is demeaning as hell, but at the same time, they still got to see somebody. In Sicily, to counter that kind of experience was they had huge grinders, and you fed into these rollers, these two rollers, one on top of the other. You would feed in sugar cane. And until Brazil was founded, it was the largest, like I said, the largest sugarcane plantation in the world. We would feed the sugarcane in, and they kept fires burning, and they would keep a sword red hot. And if you got your arm caught in a roller, they would cut off your arm with the sword, and that way it would instantly sear it shut, like cauterize it. And if you didn't continue work, by the end of the day, if you didn't continue work, they would cut your head off. So there was a lot of that. And what kicked off most of our, rebellions would be sexual oppression. They would rape our women. And it would get to the point where we would just, Sicilians have a way of doing things. We have a saying with Greeks, same face, same race, and I think that also applies to North Africans. That's why I applauded the uprisings in Northern Africa with Libya and Tunisia, because we all share the same face, that kind of profile, that long, skinny nose, you know what I mean? And the thing that happened in Sicily with sexual oppression and rape and stuff was that we would just kind of slyly kill all our masters. Like, we would wait till the middle of the night, we'd be smiling in their face and yeah, and as soon as they lay down at night, we would drag them out their house and kill them and then throw them in this Mediterranean. So, I mean, I'm not an advocate of violence at all, me personally, but, I mean, there comes a time where you have to draw a line, you know what I mean? And that was the line, was when they started raping our women habitually. And, some of the most famous uprisings started with a grope or a rape or et cetera. And you can look at Roman history. It's kind of similar, actually, believe it or not. You look at the first uprising that they had when the Roman Republic happened. Brutus, not the Brutus from Julius Caesar plays, but his ancestor Brutus killed the first Roman dictator because of a rape. So it's got a long history of that, and I'm sure I don't know anything about Haitian history. I would like you to enlighten me now in exchange for what I've just given you, and maybe you can tell me how maybe that happened to you as well, because it seems to be a common thread among slave insurrections.
Okay. Well, I thank you for the call, Tony. I'm going to let you go now, and we're going to try our best to match that intensity. So,
put me on hold, brother, and bring me back, because I wanted to talk about Lark and Rose, too, because I saw that in your tag.
Oh, okay, definitely. Yeah, well, I guess you can just stay on, but there's so much information that was shared there. I'll let James.
For real.
I'll let you go first, James, before I comment. Go ahead.
Okay, like I said, that was a lot of information, and fascinating too. I've always heard about Moors going into Sicily and Italy and places like that, but I didn't really even know that a lot of the history that he just put on. But as far as like our history goes, as much as I know is that we were slaves, we uprise. I don't know what exactly set it off. It could have been any number of things. It could have been rape. It could have been just a murder. Just somebody being a bunch of the slaves just seeing it and it's like, what, we can't take this no more. Or they probably just realized, hey, you kind of see it's kind of a lot more of us than it is of them. That's what I'm thinking. That probably could have started.
Okay, well, it's kind of hard to boil down Haitian history in the revolution in a few minutes, but it's kind of like what we've been talking about. Obviously, conditions were harsh. Human beings are human beings, after all, and the big national myth, as I would call it, I'm not saying it didn't happen, obviously, but the big national myth is that there was a group of slaves that met in a place called Bois Caïma, which translates to like crocodile woods, and they had like a voodoo ceremony, supposedly. A pig was killed, and basically they were appealing to their ancestral religion. They used it as a rallying force, if you will, and they basically started to exact revenge on the French who were oppressing the people back then. And that's basically how the mystique and the lore and the history of Haiti started, based on the fact that we were oppressed. I didn't know that Sicily was such a big sugarcane producer, so that was new to me. But I do know that Haiti was a very important colony to the French. We ended up causing the French so much trouble that they sold the what's called the Louisiana Purchase, to the United States. So the United States benefited from the Haitian Revolution, even though the United States did not recognize Haiti as a free country. And they helped with the embargo, because basically France told the United States that they were going to have an embargo and basically try to choke us off economically. And being that the French had helped the Americans against the British, that the United States and the French kind of worked together to kind of ensure that embargo to take place. And Toussaint Louverture, which is one of the heroes of the independence of Haiti, ended up agreeing to pay a ransom, which I found out was paid up to the 1940s, I think. And so we got taken for over, millions. I don't know the exact number, but it's like maybe perhaps in the billions. So that's essentially like the gist of the Haitian history. Now, Sicily holds a special part in my reality, because when I deployed to the Middle East, we actually stopped in Sicily. I remember the plane landing, and I saw this beautiful mountain, and we were landing in a military base of some sort. I really don't know the name of it, but I've been fortunate enough to go back to Italy one more time when I came back from the Middle East, and I went to Venice and everything. I didn't go back to Sicily, but Tony shared some information there, because I've learned a little bit about the Greek history and the Romans and everything, and it's a lot of times people, because of the migration and all the different movements that happen, tend to think that, you know, that part of the world is essentially, you know, Italian, as they're called today. But Tony made a very distinct point to name the Sicilians as a separate and distinct group, a group of people that had their own culture, language, etc., but obviously got influenced whether they wanted to or not.
Yeah, we're often seen as Europeans, even though, like, if you go to Italy, like you said you were in Sicily, which I'm jealous because I've never been there. But if you go to Italy, like, they'll tell you anything past the toe of Italy is Africa. Like, they hate us. They're racist against us. But, you know, like you said, you know, it's got its own language, it's got its own history.
Roger.
Oh,
go ahead, James.
Yeah, so basically, in Italy, they're actually just racist against just black people, period, or is it because of the Moors, or what is exactly the reason?
It's all black people. They don't like black people. I mean, I'm not saying the whole country. I don't want to identify everybody in one country and say that, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, if you go there, the general overarching thing is when you're Sicilian, they call you negro, which means you're from Africa. They consider anything past the toe of Italy south to be Africa. So, and that's because of the Moor influence, in which they act like the Moors didn't hit Italy too. But, you know, the people in Sicily tend to be darker. We tend to have curlier hair. We do have blue eyes for the most part, but, I mean, you can see the North African facial features, you know, the same as the Arab, because the Phoenicians were from modern-day Lebanon, and they were a seafaring people, and they congregated through the whole south of especially the islands within the Mediterranean and all of North Africa. So when you look at North African Arabs, those are all Phoenician descent, everybody. I got family in Tunisia. So, you know, Tunisia is not, you know, alien to me as far as, like, I write emails back and forth to, like, third cousins, so.
Okay. I had a friend of mine back in high school.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I had a friend of mine in high school, his name was Cass. And we used to be like, Cass tried to talk to a girl. He was like, Cass, you ain't got no game, you white. He was like, man, I ain't white, I'm Italian.
If you're from the southern toe, it's possible that they aren't considered white in Italy too, because like it's called Calabrese. It's an area in the south where a lot of people have Sicilian descent, so they're like herded in the ghettos. Well, they're not so much anymore, but for a while they were herded in the ghettos. And there's a lot of African immigrants that come in. The mob brings them in, unfortunately, and kind of use a lot of sexual slavery. It's really unfortunate. But, you know, they have a lot of similar facial features and to the people that are already living there, because a lot of the people living there already have African descent from. If you ever heard the jokes by Eddie Murphy, you know what I mean? Like, he does stand-up, what he used to with Raw and Delirious, where he would talk about Sicilian.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's relation.
So I want to remind everybody that they're listening to the Haitian FREE Thinkers show. The guest calling number is 646-652-4442, 646-652-4442. The Haitian FREE Thinkers are one of the few groups that serves the secular population of Haiti, of the Haitian population, I should say. You can find us online on Facebook. Just give us a search, Haitian FREE Thinkers. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at haitianfreethinkers@gmail.com. So tonight we have a special caller by the name of Tony, who's educating us about Sicily. And he also mentioned Larkin Rose, which is the second part of what our show's about, Anarchy. So tell us about Anarchy and Larkin Rose from your perspective.
Well, Larkin Rose is a really good spokesman for our movement. He would consider, I guess, himself an anarcho-capitalist or a voluntarist. I'm personally a free market individualist anarchist, which is very similar, not exactly the same, but pretty similar. I consider myself a left libertarian, where he might consider himself a right libertarian if he even believes in left or right. I've never heard him discuss the paradigm. But anarchism is basically the concept that coercion is the only real wrong in the world. Like if I told you reality was objective, we would all pretty much agree to that, because otherwise why would we talk to each other, right? Because, I mean, it could be that I'm a figment of your imagination otherwise, or you're a figment of mine, or we're all a figment of somebody else's. So we all agree automatically by having a conversation that inherently reality is objective. But we all view it subjectively, because that's why 10 people can view a crime and we all have a different recollection of what happened at that crime scene. Memory is, very much compromised by the fact that we have different perspectives. And because of that, anarchists believe that if you try to impose a subjective moral code, and we all know that morals are subjective, everybody's got their own idea of what is moral or not moral. Two people are like snowflakes. You can't find two people that are exactly the same on morals or ethics or whatever. So if you try to impose your subjective view, basically what you're saying is my view of the world is the correct view and everybody else's is wrong. But if you take the anarchist view, you say subjective views of morality can't be imposed, and that therefore, logically, the only objective moral truth is that coercion is wrong. You can't push your subjective morals on anybody else. That's all it basically means. And from there, you get different kinds of anarchists. You get preferences for different economics, different organizations. Like, I'm anti-democratic, so is Larkin Rose, but there are anarchists that believe in democracy, and that doesn't conflict because they don't want to force us into their democracy, and we don't want to force them out of it, And then there's economics. You got communist anarchists. Some of the greatest guys I've read, are like Kropotkin, Peter Kropotkin and mutual aid. That's where private welfare systems come from. That's basically what America had before, the state took it over and forced them all out. You've got anarcho-socialists, syndicalists. These are all different forms of economics. I'm a free market anarchist, so is Larkin Rose. But that's just a preference. That's something we all argue about among anarchists, but really it doesn't matter, because as long as we're not trying to impose our economics or our organizational methods on each other, then we're compatible. And if anybody tries to enforce a organizational method or economic system on each other, then what you have is a state by another name. You're no longer an anarchist.
Okay, now, Tony, when I asked James earlier what he thinks of when he hears the word anarchy, he described some pretty negative-sounding descriptions, which is the popular description that anarchy gets. Do you talk about your anarchy views to other people?
Yeah, and I get negative. Matter of fact, I just got off a show where a guy was cussing me out and calling me names and stuff, because he doesn't want to hear any. He asked the question. I'd start a 5-second into the answer, and then he would cuss me out. You know what I mean? Because he don't want to hear the answers. He's asking rhetorical questions, and he doesn't realize it. He gets very emotional and shuts down the parts of the brain that govern logic and reason. It is very negative in connotation, because the original meaning of the word, in all fairness, was chaos. But there were philosophers that decided that it didn't have to be chaotic. And they talked about how voluntary association is preferable to coercion. For example, the state funds itself through extortion. Now, they use a euphemism and call it taxation, but really it's just they're threatening you with a rape cage, and if you don't pay them, you go into the rape cage. The same thing with murder, right? They'll talk about capital punishment, but that's a euphemism for for-hire proxy murder, because I can't hire you to go murder somebody for me that's already arrested and not a threat to anybody else right now in a cage, but they can do it. Wars of aggression and occupation, right? Those are the same thing. That's murder. But they'll say that that's, defending our freedoms and whatnot. They'll use all kinds of euphemisms, but in reality we know if it's not direct self-defense of the populace that you're supposedly defending, then it's murder. So murder and extortion are the mainstays of the state, whereas in voluntarism, those things are considered crimes for everybody. There's a thing in ethics called universality, which means that if it's wrong for me to do, it's wrong for you to do, it's wrong for an organization to do, and then it's wrong for any organization to do, including the government. Unfortunately, the government is like bizarro world where everything's upside down, inside out, and backwards. They're allowed to do everything that we're not allowed to do. They're allowed to murder. They're allowed to extort. They're allowed to kidnap. We call that arrest. And there's organizations you can have do that without the state being involved. And they basically coercively monopolize law, coercively monopolize law enforcement, and with all coercive monopolies, you get the same results, which is higher prices, lower quality service, and less accountability. And that doesn't change when you put the word government on the coercive monopoly in question. And you know, like, let's talk about another thing that, you know, anarchists throughout history have tried to change the name from, you know, the meaning, I should say, from chaos to a philosophy about voluntarism and voluntary interactions. But we have the benefit now, that's the lovely part, is we have the benefit now of something called anthropology, which is human history through archaeological digs and so on and so forth. No state in history has ever made it 1,000 years under a single legal regime or a single ruling class. They always change dynasties through murder and so on and so forth, and therefore it changes the ideas of the law and it changes the ideas how everything's regulated. Now, you can look at a society like Celtic Ireland. Celtic Ireland lasted 2,000 years in anarchy, in complete and total statelessness. They had roads, they had trade, they had private property, they had law, they had, you know, courts, they had everything. They had different names for it. The judges were called brehons, and they only got hired based on their reputation for impartiality instead of being, you know, like in our court systems now, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the government pays the judge, and he also pays the prosecutor. So if we were talking about a fair court system, the judge would recuse himself from every case because he gets his check from the same guy that the prosecutor gets his check from. But they don't never recuse themselves because it's a set-up system. It's a monopoly. Whereas their system was a system of sureties. In other words, they elected kings. They weren't kings like we would think of them. And these kings were basically CEOs of insurance companies, and you would contract with an insurance company the same way you contract with like a phone service. Your king didn't own a geographic territory. It wasn't like everybody in this area was subject to his rules. That's not how it worked. He was only ruling the people who chose to be ruled by him. They would pay him for insurance, and then if they somebody offended them or somebody did something to them, harmed them, then they would call him in, and his insurance company would come in and, defend them, whether in court or otherwise. Wars didn't really happen on big scales because it's bad for business for wars to happen between insurance companies. If you wanted to switch insurance companies, all you had to do, you didn't have to move, you didn't have to go nowhere. You just canceled your service with the current king, and you hired a different one. So that's basically what anarchy means.
Okay, well, wow, we get a history lesson here, James.
For real, I'm loving every bit of it, though.
Yeah, it's excellent. I want to kind of round up the whole conversation by relating it to what we do as Haitian FREE Thinkers. I'm actually reading the book by Locke and Rose called The Most Dangerous Superstition.
That's the book he wrote, absolutely.
And basically, I have a feeling that he's an atheist. We happen to be atheists. James and I are both atheists, and we are also Haitian, and that's very rare. And we try to style ourselves as free thinkers, which is why I'm not afraid to investigate different ideologies, if you will. So do you mind if I ask you, Tony, what's your opinion on religion?
I'm a deist, which means I believe in a clockmaker or a grand architect. Like the God I believe in it's not a man or a woman. I don't pretend to know what it is, and I don't really care. But I don't think it interferes with our world. I don't believe in miracles or prayer or anything illogical or irrational like that. I used to be an atheist. I'm not trying to convert nobody, believe me. I'm totally down with atheism. I don't mind atheism. I think, in fact, atheism is probably the only logical belief. I don't claim that deism is logical because logic means you have to present an affirmative claim and then back it with evidence. I cannot back my claim that there's a deity with evidence. I think that agnosticism and atheism are the only rational beliefs. I don't think deism is necessarily rational because I think it's rational for an agnostic, for example, to say, I don't know and I don't care, and that's basically what they say. So I'm not going to claim that I'm logical or rational with my particular religious belief, but it's not a real religion. It's just theism. There's a difference between religion and theism. I don't believe in any of the supernatural stuff that most people do. So I'm basically, I laugh and joke with people and say that I'm a lazy atheist. But I think atheism is fine. I think that's great. I think that's better than believing in superstition. And I would say, yes, Larkin Rose is an atheist. Actually, I've heard him say so. So I know he is.
Wow.
And I think that that's probably the best belief. I think people like myself are rare that actually have a belief in a deity and yet don't use that to convey it into the rest of their philosophy. My belief in a deity is completely separate from any of the rest of my philosophy. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's just a personal preference. And that goes back to what I said about ethics earlier, is that if you're a religious person, I think Thomas Jefferson said it best, if you have one God or 10 gods, it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. But there is an exception to that quote, and the exception is when you wish to impose laws based upon your silly beliefs, right, that does pick my pocket and that does break my leg. So I don't look to impose any rules based upon my belief. It has nothing to do with what I, would try to do in society. It's a personal, individual thing. Unfortunately, most religion is not that way, and therefore I commend you, gentlemen, for being atheists.
Okay, thank you. Well, listen, guys, you're listening to the Haitian FREE Thinkers show. My name is Reggie. My co-host is James, and tonight we have Tony just giving us all kinds of skittles of knowledge. We went from Sicily to the lands of Pennsylvania, which I think Larkin Rose is from, and now we're talking about deism because we want to keep it interesting and well mixed. I want to let you gentlemen know that we have officially about 37 minutes left on the clock. It is 52 minutes past midnight. I want to make sure both of you are okay on the time. Are you guys good?
Yeah, but let me just mention to you that you also have overtime if you want it. Do you know that?
Yes, I'm aware of the overtime, but I like to be courteous to James and whoever else is calling, because usually since we usually start the show at 11:30 p.m., so we don't get a lot of callers, and so I try to be courteous. If James has to go, I understand, and in this case now we have you. That's going to be like the third party, and I want to make sure that both of you are okay on staying. I'm fine. I'm enjoying the conversation, but I also want to try to touch on the third part of the topic that I wrote up for the show, which is the Book of Mormon. More specifically, the play. There's a Broadway play going around and getting a lot of positive reviews. It's currently in my area. It's also playing in South Florida, where I'm from. I'm from the Miami area. I don't know if you know about it or have any interest in plays, but I wanted to kind of open that for discussion if possible. James, have you ever gone to a Broadway play before?
Yeah, I've actually gone to a couple of them. When I was younger in school, we went to a Christmas play. Then I got older, and my uncle and a friend of his invited me to a play in Tampa, and they're actually okay.
What about you, Tony? Do you have any knowledge or interest in the Book of Mormon, the play?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's hilarious. And the gentlemen that make it are the guys that do South Park, and they're libertarians, so they're going to be similar to anarchists, but not quite. But basically, they're going to have the same kind of sense of humor, so it should be hilarious.
I might want to see that play.
Yeah, so you know about them, and that makes my job a lot easier. Basically, they're in the area, but the tickets they're not cheap. So I would want to go with the wife, and I'm trying to see if it's worth going. But I hear that's getting a lot of great reviews, and the comedy and the punchlines and everything not only makes sense, but they make more sense if you're familiar with a little bit of the Mormon religion. Are you familiar with the Mormon religion, Tony?
As far as what most people know, I'm not going to say that I'm extensively familiar with it, but I know it's a little weird.
What about you, James? Would you say that you know about the same thing about the Mormons, just the general information?
Just the general information. Every time I hear about Mormons, the main thing that would stick out to me is that they're nice to us down here, so we can serve them up in their heaven. They're nice to black people down here on earth for us to serve them up in their heaven. Yeah,
they're not big on black people, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's the main thing that sticks out when I hear something about Mormons.
Well, I've never heard of black people serving Mormons in heaven, but you never know, because I do know that it was
in their heaven. That's what I heard.
Okay, well, in the 1970s, that's when they opened up the priesthood, as they call it, to black people. Now, that's a very interesting thing, because, like, why would black people want to be priests in a religion which formerly treated them as lesser than, I guess, human? That's always puzzled me. Just like there's gay people who want to have their religion and yet hold on to religions that dislike them. I think that's something that's worth examining. But like Tony mentioned earlier, Matt Stone and Trey Parker are the creators of South Park, and they routinely make fun of different religions. I can't see them making a show about the Muhammad situation. I think
they did it a little, but they weren't allowed by the network.
Yeah. And have you seen the cartoon when they did the Muhammad? It was like a funny looking character. It wasn't like
he was a teddy bear. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something so outlandish that nobody could get upset with it.
But actually, even that has a story, because did you know about the teddy bear named Muhammad in Africa? Did you hear about that story?
No.
No, never heard of it.
What happened was that I think it was a white lady who was teaching, I want to say in Chad or one of the North African countries, and one of the children that she was teaching had a teddy bear whom the child named Muhammad. And basically the locals caught wind of that, and they arrested the teacher for blasphemy. So the use of the teddy bear was not by a mistake. It wasn't just for goof. I believe that Matt and Trey, they knew about that story, and they used Muhammad, the teddy bear, in lieu of Muhammad the prophet, based on that same story. Now, I would have to Google it and get you some of the specifics, but it's a story that's essentially having to do with that. So I just think that those two guys are so smart, and I also think that, just like Tony mentioned, I think that they're libertarian, atheistic leaning. They're very smart, you know.
Yeah, they said so in interviews.
Right. So, and they happen to be Broncos fans too, which I don't know how I feel about that, but either way, I like that kind of thing. I'm the kind of guy that I love satire. Ever since I discovered satire, I've been in love with it, because it's an easy way to kind of I call it greasing knowledge into the brains of people who might not otherwise feel comfortable with disturbing information, things that they would normally consider. So it looks like both of you are on board and open to seeing the play. I'm also trying to see how I can swing it financially and time-wise. But that's the one thing I enjoy with hanging out with smart people who come from different backgrounds, because we all bring something to the conversation. Tony blessed us tonight, if you want to use the term blessed, with knowledge about the Sicilian history a little bit. He knew a lot about Larkin Rose, and I started to ask James about anarchy, and like I said, he gave the classic definition of anarchy. And the reason why I even chose to add this to the show is I'm gaining an interest in anarchy. I spoke to another smart guy, a friend of mine, and he described anarchy as chaos, and I just knew it was not worth getting into a conversation with him. I knew that I couldn't bring up Larkin Rose, because as of right now, he's new to me, and I do more research than the average person. So I guess I'll ask Tony now, like how far do you see anarchy going as far as gaining popularity as even something that's not offensive to regular people?
It's a movement that's been around since 6th century BC. I mean, it started with the Taoists in China, with Lao Tzu and Xuanzi, which said things like a petty thief is thrown in prison, whereas a great brigand is the ruler of a state. They said things like, society should not be ruled because the people enrich themselves when left to their own devices. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not exactly quoting. I'm just doing this from memory. And then in the 4th century BC, give or take, after the execution of the state, or I should say of Socrates by the state, which was often looked at as the greatest Western philosopher or the father of Western philosophy, he was executed, made to drink poison because they thought he was so-called corrupting the youth with his words. So freedom of speech, basically.
Right. Hemlock. To drink hemlock.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you're familiar with that. That's great. Then Plato and Aristotle came along, but see, that's the mainstream. That's what most people are taught. Most people. I went to college for a little while and I quit because I didn't like what I was getting. And what I found was they taught Aristotle and Plato, but they didn't teach the other side of the argument. Those guys believed in what's called the utopian state. They thought that a republic could be formed, and from the republic you could have utopia. And I think the utopian state is an oxymoron. I think you can't have utopia with the state. Or you might look at it like you can only have utopia with the state, because utopia was defined by Sir Moore. I can't think of his first name. He was, I believe, a clergyman in England as a communist state, which, everybody's equal and all that. But, of course, you try that and you're going to have all kinds of genocide, because that's, been tried many times, and every time it ends up with millions getting murdered for merely, like in Pol Pot's case in Cambodia, just for wearing glasses. They thought, well, he might be an intellectual, put a pickaxe on the back of his head. The state is the most deadly thing out there, but getting back to philosophy, there was guys like Antisthenes, I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure, Diogenes of Sinope, or Sinope, however you want to pronounce that. He was from Turkey. These guys preached that, the Cynic philosophy, which is very similar, coincidentally, to Jesus Christ's actual philosophy, not what Christians believe today, but what he actually preached, which was, finding happiness within the self and so on and so forth. Not that I'm saying that Jesus was, God or anything. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, that he was a philosopher that existed. He lived a day's walk from Gadara, which there was a lot of construction going on at the time in the Middle East. And he would probably have worked there with his father, because they were either bricklayers or carpenters. That kind of interpretation of the Jewish text is sort of up for grabs. I think it means bricklayer. Some people think it means carpenter. But basically, they would work in Gadara, and Gadara was the cynical capital of the world. Well, out of cynical stuff came Stoics, which was Zeno of Citium. Zeno of Citium was the first philosopher to propose the equality of the sexes. And then you had Hipparchia, who was the first female philosopher who actually lived as an equal to her husband, and was probably the first feminist in history, although she didn't actually call it that. They believed in dog coupling, which was similar to marriage, but they didn't think of it as monogamy. They called it synogamy, which means dog coupling. Cynics and Stoics looked at dogs as a very honorable creature, because it was always honorable, always loyal, and never disloyal to the person who fed the dog, and so on and so forth. So they thought that dogs were very loyal, and when Diogenes of Sinope died, they built statues to him, but they never built him. They built statues of dogs. So there's this other side of the philosophy. It goes back at least, like I said, 2,600 years. And there's all these radicals preaching that you don't need a state, that you could actually do things through voluntary interaction. And it just moved through time. You had Proudhon in Europe, who was a politician and a philosopher. I'm sorry, was you trying to say something? Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to interject to say, well, with all that being said, the long history and everything, a lot of people still get this notion that it's negative in nature and it's chaotic and it's not something to be desired. If they don't even really go into deeper like you have. So my question is to you, how did that happen?
Well, the original meaning of the word anarchy was chaos. So, to be fair to the statists, there's a reason why they think that, because that was the original meaning of the word. But there were philosophers that came along like Proudhon or Goodwin, I should say Godwin, not Goodwin, who adopted the word because they felt that it was a kind of a protest. They were trying to be sarcastic. They were saying, "Oh, you think anarchy is chaotic? What do you call the state?" So they named themselves anarchists, right? I think Godwin was the first one to call himself an anarchist. So that's the confusion, is really that there's a original meaning of the word, which is now colloquial, which means like it's not definition really in philosophy. And then there's the philosophical meaning of the word, which if you go read any anarchist philosopher, they do not preach chaos. Very few even preach violence. The only violence preachers are insurrectionists and illegalists, and that was in Europe during their really bad depression periods. And those people basically, there was a famous incident where an illegalist shot another illegalist and he refused to tell the cops, So it was like, that was that kind of stuff, kind of organized criminal, that kind of thing. And the mob kind of took that route. But they have a fair argument to say that it means chaos. But what we mean by anarchism is a philosophical definition. It's an economic, it's got all kinds of implications, whereas what the average person means is anarchy means chaos. But if you or I were to describe anarchy, because you're both intellectual gentlemen, right? So I'm guessing what you want is the intellectual argument. You don't want the colloquial argument. So what we would mean by it, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, I think it's worth discussing. It's worth exposing people as far as giving them different philosophical options so that they could see where they fall in line. I would have appreciated this information while I was doing social studies in high school. I think I was mature enough to handle it. It's not that hard to understand. So I just...
Yeah, you just can't expect the state to do it. The state has a vested interest in not teaching you this. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to teach you anything but Plato and Aristotle. They don't want to teach you anything but anarchy is chaos because they have a vested interest. So don't expect them to fund a real education. That's why autodidactism, or in other words, educating yourself, is so important. And so many people are intellectually lazy, and obviously you gentlemen are not. And I appreciate that very much, believe me. So would Larkin Rose, if he were here right now, he would definitely commend you on that. What anarchy means from a philosophical point of view is pretty simple. It just means a society organized according to the principles of anarchism, and anarchism being a philosophy surrounded by a simple premise, which is we want to reduce coercion in the world, that is to say, initiations of violence against innocent people, to the absolute minimum, or, if possible, in some utopian sense, abolish it. It may never be abolished, but because there's always going to be criminals and such. But we wish to reduce it at the very least, to its absolute minimum. I don't see why that's so radical, but yet it is radical because so many people spend 15,000 hours in state schools being brainwashed into the idea that coercion is noble. Taxation, or better known as extortion, is your quote-unquote dues to society, what we pay for peace, and so on and so forth. And, if you can't get past that concept, which most people cannot, then we're never going to, be able to open a conversation logically about anarchism. Go ahead. I heard you trying to pop in.
Well...
Should I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, when you were giving a description of different types of anarchists and all this other stuff like that, I find myself, thinking similar in some ways, because I was thinking, and not grand things like you said, the taxation. I was thinking about my situation, certain situations of friends of mine, like who have children and they're not married, and the state actually forces the mother to put the father on child support. Now, if the guy can't pay child support or keep up with child support payments, they take away his driver's license, they take away his passport, they will actually hold you in jail until you pay a certain amount, or you'll stay in there for 6 months.
Yeah, you go to jail for nonviolent crime, basically.
Yeah, that's crazy. You haven't done a crime, you haven't done anything whatsoever, but they will put a warrant out for your arrest for not paying child support.
Are you saying that the parents of the child, they get along, nothing's wrong, but the state is forcing a mom to...
Yes, if she has a little part-time job, or she's going to school, and she needs some assistance, she needs to get on health care for the child, or she needs to get food stamps or anything. They were like, well, do you know who the father is? And they were like, yeah. And they were like, well, is he on child support? They were like, no. Well, you have to go ahead and put him on child support and all the things of that nature.
It gets worse, even worse than that. Yeah. That's
just scratching the surface. And they were like, you have to put him on child support. And the girl would be like, well, I don't want to put him on child support. They were like, well, you have to come back here at such a time. And the girl, she's like, ugh. So they're probably now her and the baby father. Now that starts an argument. Now she puts him on child support, and now if he doesn't have a job, or if he does have a job, his anything that he's getting on his paycheck, you might as well take 2/3 of that out of it. Like whatever he was making before he was getting on child support, now that he's on child support, they're taking 2/3 of that. He can't really keep up with bills and things like that. He can't keep up with child support. He may lose his job. Anything can happen. And
go ahead.
And now he has a chain around his neck. He has to hurry up and try to find a job or try to do something.
Here's a good example. I'm glad you brought that up. All right. If they're even still together and she needs help for whatever reason,
they'll do the same thing. Yeah.
They will tell her to kick him out of the house. They will tell you to become a single mother in order for you to get benefits, because you can't get the benefits if the man's in the house. That if you look at illegitimacy rates, in other words, single mother rates, before the welfare system was incepted, before that we had a private welfare system under the principles of Peter Kropotkin, which was an anarchist, and it was called mutual aid or fraternal societies. Granted, they were race-based. They could have been based on location or vocation, and instead they banned them all because they were race-based, which is just completely ridiculous. They could have got rid of the race-based part and kept the vocation-location. They will actually tell you to throw the husband out of jail. So you can look at the rates, and the rates before the welfare system was incepted by the state, the illegitimacy rates among black families was less than like 20%, right? And then you look now, and the legitimacy rates, in other words, the two parents in the same household, is less than 20%, or at least in the low 20s. There's a reason for that. They have economically incentivized women of color to throw their man out of the house, or in your case, you're talking about the specific example you gave was they was already out of the house. There is a disincentive. Let's talk about what would happen in Anarchy. In Anarchy, a woman could only get child support if she had a contract from the man. So she would have to get to know the guy. She would have to develop some relationship enough to where he would sign a contract and say, if you get pregnant, I will be responsible for that child. Because there's no enforcement of a contract if there is no contract. Instead, what we have is a system where it's assumed that there's a contract. One-night stand, a woman could be a frivolous, I don't mean to use derogatory words, but slut, whore, whatever you want to use, and she could go out and do whatever she wants and have sex with whoever she wants, and she knows that she can have that frivolous behavior because the state will back her. Right? If she gets pregnant, they will back her up. So there's no incentive for her to have good morals. I'm not saying that women generally don't have good morals. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that certain women are incentivized financially to have loose morals through the state. Whereas in a free society, she would have to get you to sign a contract, and you would sign that contract, and then bam, now you're on the hook. Now she can get child support from you. Otherwise, there's no arrangement. And how many women do we know? I know a lot. How many do you know that have kids by multiple different guys because they know? Not that they did it on purpose, generally speaking, logically, but they subconsciously knew. They can get payments from all of these different guys. It's payday if I have a baby. Or look at the stars. Look at like Puff Daddy. He's paying millions of dollars per month. That's not child support. That's ex-girlfriend support. That is, and that ain't even support.
Extortion.
Yeah, that's extortion. Thank you.
Wow, millions. So it's cheaper to keep her, but it looks like the state is making it way more complicated than it needs to be. I'll tell all the ladies out there, I don't have it, so don't even bother coming after me. I don't have it. So tonight's conversation has been gold. We have about 14 minutes left in regulation time, and then I don't know how much time they give us for overtime, but I do know about the
exactly
overtime.
Half of what you had normally. So if you had a 2-hour show, you get an hour.
There you go. So I'm assuming that you stumbled across the Haitian Free Thinkers show by being a member of the Blog Talk Radio family, if you will.
I used to do a show here on my beliefs, and they kind of developed as the show went. You know what I mean? I didn't start off where I'm at now, but yeah, I used to do a show here, and I've been friends with a lot of hosts. I came here tonight to talk with a host that I talk to on occasion when I'm in town, because I work out of town a lot, and he died. So tonight was a kind of a sad moment for me, because I just found out that he passed away from heart surgery, and it was upsetting, because he was a really great guy, man. And you know, unfortunately, Loki was his name. Loki was his handle anyway. I don't know, that wasn't his real name, but he passed away, and it's just, I found out tonight.
Okay, so you did a search and then you stumbled upon our show, or based on the tag?
Yeah, exactly. I hit the live button, and then I saw your show, and I'm interested in Haitian culture because of the fact that we share a similarity in slavery history. And then I saw Larkin Rose in your tags, and I said, well, this is a show I want to call.
Okay, well, that's wonderful, because James and I, we've been doing this show. This is like our 10th show, approximately.
Yeah.
And like I said, because of the time that we come on live, I know that it's very difficult to get callers. But even better that we get callers is to get somebody who's as well versed and motivated as you are. So I think both James and I have learned quite a bit. So I think that's excellent, wonderful. We have a lot of things that we have in common, and the things that we don't have in common, we're definitely willing to be able to sit down and exchange ideas and listen and learn and comment. And that's just such a rare thing in today's world, and in this society. And because you have to understand, James works with some interesting people, right, James?
Yeah, I do.
And basically, he does. Well, I'll let James explain. Go ahead, James. Tell him about the Christian guy.
Okay, basically, I'm I help a guy do electrician work, and he's helping me out to learn the trade a little bit, and he's thinking about starting a business, and he was basically telling me he wants to teach me everything and show me all the ropes, but he asked me if I was a Christian, if I wouldn't believe in God, if I went to church, and basically, I had to play the whole Christian, role, and every time he said a verse, I grew up in church, so I tell him I know about the stories, and he could tell that I grew up in church. So basically, I've been playing the whole Christian role, so I can keep the job and learn as much as possible.
I've been there, man.
and it doesn't have to be a religious potential disagreement, because like where I work at, it's a very religious office. I'm in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area right now, and it's understood that
I got an exit lives there.
Okay, it's understood that the things I'm most interested in are not good for polite conversation, and I don't mind getting animated. I've learned to be mature and respectful. I wasn't always this way. I was a lot more passionate. But it's still good to learn from people from different walks of life, especially when you're knowledgeable. If you're bringing the knowledge, to me, it's a big thing. But unfortunately, where I work at, I can't, like for example, let me give you a perfect example. I'm trying to be a police officer, basically, and there's a oath, right, that says that before you become a police officer, you have to swear that you're going to uphold the laws, and also you cannot be communist, right? And so that grabbed my attention. And so
they really say that?
Well, it really does say that. And you know what? I'm gonna get a copy of it and read it verbatim, because I could not believe it. And when I read that, I said to myself, this is from the 1950s, when McCarthyism was all the rage,
Right.
That's my thinking. So I took that and I asked my guy that I work with, I said, hey, why can't you be communist and work here? He looked at me like I grew 3 heads, and like, you know, he's like, well, why are you asking this? Like I'm some kind of subversive spy. And we actually took the question to the immediate supervisor, and he's a former Marine, and he has a Jesus fish on his thing. I mean, he is like a walking stereotype, right? Of you know, patriotism and honor and Jesus loving and everything. And so I'm literally like I'm getting this funny feeling in my stomach, like I should not be talking about this, but I thought that we could be adults about it. And then so the guy, his name is Wall. Wall says, hey, Sergeant, this is what the enemy at. And he looked at me like, he said to me that if we were in the Marines, I would get a blanket party.
Wow. Oh, snap.
Yeah. You know what that is, right?
Yeah, them people are sociopaths or something.
Yeah, that is.
So for those of you who don't know what a blanket party is, I'm gonna say it so that you know we can all be on the same page.
So blanket, I can beat you.
Yeah, they beat you up, and so I was like looking at his face to see like where's the sarcasm, where does he say like I'm just kidding, and although he was smiling, I just felt that there was this eeriness of like I can't believe this guy said that, and they compared being a member of the Communist Party to being affiliated with Al Qaeda. So
let me ask you a question, my friend. I gotta ask you a question. Why do you want to be a police officer? Because I mean, I'm not saying that it's a bad profession. I don't think all cops are bad, but do you realize the laws you're going to have to enforce? You know, like the drug war, for example, victimless crimes like prostitution. I mean, you're going to have to throw people in rape cages for not creating victims. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would suggest to you to look into a video series called Anarchy in Detroit. And there's a private police service in Detroit right now called Threat Management. And these guys weed out people like you're describing, people that are sick, sadistic, sociopathic monsters who think violence is fun and exciting. They don't usually let in veterans because veterans usually come home and think, well, if I can legally shoot somebody, I should be able to shoot somebody. You know, definitely look them people up, man, because you being a cop is going to mean that you sound like a very bright and honorable and ethical person. You being a cop means that you're going to have to violate your belief system constantly.
Well, the question that was asked initially was, why am I a police officer, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the quick and simple answer is that it's just an ends to a means. You have to understand that I'm a military person, been deployed twice and everything, and basically at the time, because you know I'm always evolving. What happened was it was brought to my attention that one of my leaders was a police officer. He made the profession sound very not fun, but you know as a great thing to parlay with our military experience.
Sure.
And so that's how I was introduced to the idea. And basically, years later, I was trying to get onto somebody's police force and use my experience and continue my education. And this police department that I got picked up by here was the first to give me an opportunity to basically work, and that's it's my short-term goal. My ultimate goal, if everything works out right, is for me to be an entrepreneur and or a social activist. That's really like where my heart is at. That's why I do what it is that I'm doing right now. I've just stumbled upon the whole Larkin Rose thing, and I find it very intriguing. And I actually read the book at work, which is very like contradictory. I know. But I still want to learn.
It's okay.
While I have the little bit of time, and I've had these conflicts of interest before, philosophically speaking and ethically speaking, And the way that I'm able to carry on is because, number one, until I find another job, here I am. And number two, you know, I get to have a unique perspective from the inside, so that if Larkin Rose is talking about whatever, I was there. You know, when people talk about, for example, Freemasons, I was a Freemason. When people talk about war, I was there. Not to say that I myself was transgressing and doing some highly unethical stuff. And I'm honest enough to say that, you know, when I was in certain situations, I did things, but I'm going to tell you what I was thinking about and what kind of pressure I was under.
Yeah, you're not alone, man. You're not alone. There's a lot of veterans that are anarchists now. Like, you look at Adam Kokesh. You know who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he was a veteran for Fallujah, you know what I'm saying? So you're not alone, brother. You're not alone. Don't worry about it. Everybody does. Dude, I wasn't always an anarchist. You know what I'm saying? I've done questionable things. I've done, you know, violent things in my life. I grew up on the streets in Cleveland, which has the second highest poverty rate in the country. Believe me, I've done some very questionable ethical things. So it's okay. It's okay. You can come to the light without, you know what I'm saying, without denying your past. It's okay.
Right. So that's big. This is very simple, but you know, I do take those questions very seriously. To give you an idea, right? I was in Afghanistan not too long ago, and I came back home a few months ago, and but before I left to go to my deployment, this guy, a younger brother of a friend of mine, basically called me a pig, you know, because he knew I just got on with the police department. And I thought that was uncalled for, but then I started to see some videos on YouTube, and I was exposed to a lot of information, and there's a lot of negative. There's a reason why a lot of police units have bad reputation, and I was disheartened because I was returning home to this profession, and I want to keep my head up high. As an individual, of course, I have the opportunity to make different choices, but institutionally speaking, I definitely am very open and very sensitive to the concerns of the citizens. And I work with that every day, but there's very few people I can discuss that with without being called a pig, you know, without even talking to me and understanding where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So it's a very complex situation, but I understand my motivation. I understand my plan, and I think hopefully that it will work out in a positive way as I pick up the experience towards my next step. So that's where I'm coming from.
Believe me, I'm not trying to. I won't call you names like that. I've listened to you. I haven't really, you know, I don't know you personally, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just from the show as it is, I feel like, you know, I've gotten a sense of you, and I play poker for a living, so I'm good at reading lies, you know what I mean? And I feel like you haven't lied to me in this show. I don't feel like you're putting up a front, you know what I mean? So I feel like you're a good person, but the people that you work with, you see them, you've just described them, some of them are not so good, and there's a reason for that. Because if you're a sick sociopathic individual, you're a sadistic individual, you like to see the pain of others, you enjoy that. What better job to have than a cop or a politician or a high-ranking soldier, somebody that can order people into, you know, murder others or to, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, I appreciate your service in the military. I understand that, you know, what have you. But, you know, you have to understand that, you know, after 2 years of Afghanistan, it stopped being about defense, and it all started to be about nation building and empire building, and let's put this corrupt son of a bitch, you know, Karzai in office, and let's help him fix elections, and, you know, that all kind of, you know, and it's no surprise that he's related directly to the people who England had in power when they had an empire in that region of the world. You know what I mean? He's directly related to them. He's a direct descendant from the royalty that was in there when England had their puppet state in place. It's a real shame what we're doing to our soldiers. You know, we're convincing them that they're defending our freedoms, and they're defending corporate gains, and they're you know, representing statist authoritarian goals, and they don't even know it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think you wasted your life. I don't think you wasted your time. I won't insult you in any way, man. You seem like a very intelligent, very ethical, very moral person. You don't need religion to be moral. You know what I mean? I totally appreciate that. I don't want you to think I'm discounting you at all or trying to dog you at all. I just want you to consider, getting out of that line of work as soon as you can, or going into a line of work that's very similar, but is got an accountability beyond what the state's going to give you, which is like I said, threat management in Detroit. It's a long move. I don't know if you want to stay in law enforcement, but them people are doing private law enforcement, and they're doing it where the cops won't because Detroit's given up. Another thing I would ask you to do is watch a video by Larkin Rose called The Undeniable Truth. Have you seen that video?
I'm subscribed to Larkin Rose's YouTube channel, but I have not seen that. I have not seen that video. And real quick, I want to interject that we are now officially in overtime. This is the Haitian FREE Thinkers show. For those of you who will listen to this very special broadcast, my name is Reggie. My host is James, and we're joined tonight by Tony from Ohio. And you can find us on YouTube as well. We do have a Haitian FREE Thinkers YouTube channel, which we're building content, but we're mostly on Facebook. Just Google us, search for us, Haitian FREE Thinkers, and we are one of the few secular groups for Haitians. And tonight we're talking about immigration, anarchy, and also the Book of Mormon, which we touched upon tonight. So, you were saying, Tony, what were you saying?
I just want you to watch that video, The Undeniable Truth. It's very offensive to people who believe in the state. It's meant to be offensive. It's a speech from his book, The Iron Web, where I won't give away the book in case you want to read it. It's a fiction book. It's a novel. But he describes, it's the speech that the main character gives to the courtroom, basically. And he gives this speech about defense of his anarchist point of view, his liberty-oriented point of view, why he did what he did in the book. And it basically lays out how voters are not as, people that vote are not as moral as they think they are, how the state is not what they think it is, and how their morals are completely upside down and inside out. And it shows some pictures of police doing things that you've probably maybe had to do. I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing. Lock up people for drugs and stuff like that. And it'll make you think. It'll make you, in an adversarial kind of way. It makes you think like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, what do I believe really? And why is it that I view these people? And you sound reasonable. You don't sound like you view people who might non-violently sell drugs. That's different than violently backing up your drug sales with threats of violence or using violence, or drug users. You don't sound like you sound. Do you think those people are evil? I would guess you don't.
No, I'm quite liberal with my perspective with drugs. Well, mostly marijuana myself. I'm a different bird, man. Like I was created differently, and like when I learn about the simplicity of some of the arguments, I just feel like I'm from a different planet. But my thinking skills and my ethics are definitely gonna come into question. Like, for example, like just me asking about the whole communist thing, because like I can, besides that particular oath, there's another oath that involves God. Those are the kind of things where like I can see myself being in the class, because I'm not a sworn officer yet. I'm trying to go to the academy. I can see myself raising my hand, and I'm always having to make that choice of, is it worth it? Just like James works with that Christian, and I feel like eventually I might have to pull a Adam Kokesh. I don't think that what we're talking about needs to be offensive at all. I don't think it should be violent at all. All I'm using is my brain and my words to say why. And it's part of being a free thinker. I'm supposed to be challenged. I want to be challenged, and I want to grow. And if these things need to be changed, then I'm all for it. I mean, if that's what I'm supposed to do ultimately, then I think it's only a matter of time. So, but right now it is what it is, and if I can do just something as simple as this show, which could be recorded and be used for positive things, hopefully in the next few days, months, and years, then I think that's a great thing, because I think the world needs as much of positive intellectual people as they can, because what we're talking about is actually important and people's lives are being affected. So I think we should do the best that we can.
I just want you to be prepared, man. That's all. I just want you to be prepared because, I mean, there's going to come a point where you have to make a decision if you become a police officer between the thin blue line of silence when you watch your partner beat somebody's ass for no reason and you ain't supposed to snitch. And if you do, that'll mean your career is over. They'll blackball you. It'll be an unspoken thing where you won't be able to get a job nowhere else. So will you take your livelihood away from your family, or will you just say, you know what, this is wrong and I'm going to speak up? And it'll be up to you. And they might even charge you with crimes. They might even come after you and persecute you. And, I just don't want you to put yourself in that situation if you're not prepared for that. If you're prepared for it, you sound like you've been to war and all that, hey, man, then do what you got to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. That's up to you. But I want to, as an empathetic person, I don't want you to get hurt. That's all I'm saying.
And I do appreciate the concern. I really do. And I have a feeling that we can and we should keep in contact so that we can continue to build and exchange ideas so that we can make some of these things come to fruition, because I'm definitely interested in ideas and learning, because some of the things that you touched on tonight, I'm definitely interested in expounding upon. But I will check out the video, and
I wanted to ask.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, what are some good anarchist books to start off with, and what are some good ones? Maybe some that to get you started off with, anarchist.
If I'm going to recommend something to convince you of anarchism, I'm not even going to go with books.
No, not nothing to convince me. Just give me, something easy to read, or a video, something to break it down more to me, to different levels or different aspects of. Yeah,
I'm gonna suggest you a guy named Stefan Molyneux. That's STFAN MOLYNEUX.
I'm sorry, spell that last name again.
His last name, you said?
Yeah, let's spell the last name.
Yeah, MOLYNEUX. Molyneux. He's French Canadian, but he's an anarchist, and he's the most popular, most downloaded philosophy site on the internet. Period. He makes a living as a philosopher by begging for donations, and he successfully does so. He puts out videos on anarchism. Yeah, he does a podcast called Free Domain Radio. It's freedom, and then it's free and then domain, and it's all one word: FREEDOMAIN. I don't agree with him 100%. He's a pacifist, for example, and I believe in self-defense. But for the most part, that guy puts out flawless videos. He's got a famous video called The History of Your Enslavement. He's got, just so many videos that it's unbelievable. He talks about every, what's happening in the media at the common time. What is that called? Current event. He talks about current events, on top of doing philosophical videos. Some of his videos are 3 hours long. Some of them are 5 minutes. It just depends. But if you go to his YouTube channel, there's a great amount of stuff there. If you want to understand law for government, without government, law without government, if you type that into YouTube, you'll get some videos, 3 of them, in fact, that add up to about a half hour altogether. They're each about 8 minutes or so. It's Law Without Government Principles, and those aren't Stefan Molyneux. That's a separate guy named Graham Wright. But don't worry about his name because, once you get to his channel, you can go ahead and look through his videos. It's Law Without Government Principles, Law Without Government Negotiation, and so on and so forth. And you'll get to see how law works without a government system. It basically describes what I was describing earlier about Celtic Ireland, but it does it in more detail and gives you the logic behind it. So that you can understand it. Larkin Rose's videos are great. If you want to laugh, There's some speeches by Doug Casey. He's hilarious, Doug Casey. See, the problem, this is why I like you guys, because you're both of color, right? The thing about the anarchist movement in America is it seems to be a white sausage fest. It's all dudes, and they all happen to be white. And it creeps me out, you know what I mean? But there's no reason it has to be. You know what I'm saying? It's just that right now it seems that it seems like the lower class white trash, if you will. I came from a bad neighborhood, so I'll call myself white trash. I don't even know if you consider me white, but whatever. You know what I mean? I appear and at least pass as. So then, that kind of seems to be what it comes from, is mostly that. And then there's the upper class people like Doug Casey, who is a rich investor. He wrote the book International Man. You may have heard of that book. He's been traveling the world his whole life. He's lived in I don't know how many countries, 100-plus countries. And, this dude is super rich investor, and yet he's an anarchist. So it's either the extremes. It's the really rich or the really poor white trash. And then, so we keep getting all these white dudes. And it's like we need some women and we need some people of color. And it's nice to hear you guys entertaining the idea, because even if you don't end up agreeing with it, at least you're entertaining the concept. And I really think you guys are logical and rational enough that you will accept the idea inevitably, because nobody that is this open-minded, this much of a free thinker, will reject the concepts of truth, logic, reason, etc. The only thing I could say is, if you wanted to read books, Stefan Molyneux's got some great books. They're free on his website, Free Domain Radio. After you listen to his podcast and stuff, you can go ahead and get his books for free right there. You can even go to like Groove Shark. I don't know if you use that. It's like a music site where you can download music and listen to music. His books are, at least one of them, Everyday Anarchy, is on there for free, book on tape, so you can listen to it instead of read it, which
it's
I
called
enjoy.
Groove what now?
It's called Everyday Anarchy, and it's called Groove Shark, like you're in your groove.
Groove Shark.
Yeah, it's all one word.
Okay, here's how we're gonna make it simple for everybody. I'm gonna give you the email to the show. If you could please send everything that you just said, if you remember it. Plus, it's gonna be recorded, obviously. But our email is Haitian.
Hang on, let me
FREE
get a pen.
Thinkers okay.
Okay, what is it?
It's Haitian FREE Thinkers, all one word, @gmail.com. And I've been thinking about shortening the handle because it's a mouthful, and like I don't want to make a new handle, but I'll work that out. But it's Haitian FREE Thinkers @gmail.com, and we will definitely like to keep in contact with you. If you're up around this time, we have our show, like I said, at least every Saturday at 11:30 p.m. I'm going to try to wrap it up this evening because we are in overtime and it's a little bit late. But we enjoyed the conversation. But I want to add one more thing to the whole everything that we've been talking about, as far as how I kind of came to an anarchy disposition, if you will. And what happened with me was that I was taking a class in the military in Virginia, and I don't know why I was thinking about this, but I came to the conclusion naturally through my own reasoning that we should have a stateless world. I think that the notion of the state needs to disappear. I think it's through the evolution of the human, we don't need that model anymore. And I couldn't envision how one human can tell another human that you cannot live and work here, etc. Because I'm an immigrant. I was born in Haiti. I migrated to the United States legally, but I've always had that classic what's the term, problem with immigration reform and all these things that the United States tries to enact, because not just me, a lot of people know the story of how the United States was formed as a nation, and it's not it's not glorious. It's not like clean. It's not like It's not this picture that they're painting. And so for them to like erect the wall between Mexico and the United States, it's kind of like it feels like it's a bizarre world, like you described it earlier, because a lot of the south part of the United States once belonged to Mexico. We even have a state called New Mexico, and there's a reason for it. And so I could not see myself putting my hand on your chest, Tony, and say you cannot move here to the state of Georgia, for example, or wherever it is that you're trying to do live. Why? Because I don't know. My grandfather scribbled something on a piece of paper a long time ago, and that's the reason why you can't live here. So I didn't know about anarchy philosophy. That's just what I thought about it, and I knew that this would be controversial. Once again, I've always think about certain philosophies on my own. They may not have a name that I know of at the time, but that's kind of how, in my own way, I got turned on to this notion. And I know it's a very difficult thing for some people to wrestle with, but that's why I'm very much open to the idea of anarchy, because if anything, I want to be able to converse intelligently about the topic, and that's why I find such great interest in it, because this is the potential new frontier for humanity for the next few hundred years if we don't screw over the planet. So I think it's an important conversation to have, and it's worth possibly doing another show on it, because we have a boatload of information that you've given us tonight. I know James and I are going to try our best to look at these videos. I'm already subscribed to Lark and Rose. I need to check out what's going on with Adam Kokesh. There's this beautiful young lady named, what's her name? Oh, she's so hot.
Brittany?
No, Lark and Rose is working with her.
Oh, Josie?
Josie.
Yeah.
Oy, oy, oy. Anyway, but yeah. So we're gonna hopefully you email us the information. We're gonna be back on the air at a minimum next Saturday night, 11:30. I would love to hear from you again, Tony. Send us as much information you can to Haitian FREE Thinkers at gmail.com, and we'll pick it up from there. Sounds good?
Yeah, I'll email you for sure, and I'm really proud of you for getting there on your own, because it took me the better part of a decade to go from, just complete brainwashed fool to where you're already at, which is curious about something that I would have never got curious about. I got curious because people insulted me for being stupid about what I was saying, and then I got mad at myself and went, I got to learn this stuff and figure out why, what's wrong with it. And then I realized there's nothing wrong with it. I'm wrong.
Well, it's okay, because I have my own personal story. James has his own personal story. Trust me, we've all taken time or had some person or some event turn us on to different things. So your story is unique only because it belongs to you. But besides that, we each have our own different histories, and that's great. And I just feel that we're going to be doing some positive and wonderful things in the next couple of months, days, and years. So with that being said,
it's a pleasure to meet you guys.
Pleasure to meet you too, Tony. I'm going to let everybody know that this has been the Haitian FREE Thinkers show. You've been listening to myself, Reggie, Tony, our special guest. Philip was the first caller. Thank you, Philip, for calling. And, of course, James was able to grace us with his presence. And so we're going to close out the show, and we'll see you back here on the Haitian FREE Thinkers show next Saturday at 11:30 p.m. And everybody, so have a very good night.
Good night.
Good night.